Coming up next on the Copperhead Sam channel, we go to the Kinston battlefield in Kinston, North Carolina. The Battle of Kinston.
Okay, we're here in Kinston, North Carolina, on the battlefield, the Battle of Kinston, which occurred on December the 14th, 1862. What you see behind me is Harriet's Chapel, which was a pivotal point between the Confederate and the Union lines during that battle in 1862. We're going to take a moment right now, and we're going to have Lonnie Blizzard take us inside, and he's going to tell us about the inside of the church and what happened there.
Okay, now we're on the inside of the old church here. This is a site to help us interpret the whole entire site, but this old church set at this site during the Civil War, the Battle of 1862, was Harriet's Chapel. And it was named for Miss Harriet Jones simply because she gave the land and some of the timber to build the old church with. And it was a very prominent landmark for both the Union and Confederates. We're near the center line of the final line of defense, which run for about a half a mile to my right and about a half a mile to my left, just outside the windows here. And if you read a lot of the officers' records, you'll see they referred to the old church or to Harriet's Chapel, whichever side they were on. And the Confederates used it as part of their defense. They shot from the windows and underneath. I think even some crawled up on the roof and shot from the roof as the Union was attacking from the south. But the church basically was pretty much shot up during that battle. A number of the musket balls went through, and as well as the record show, one cannonball went through all the way through the church. But it was not destroyed to a great extent, but what it couldn't be used as a field hospital, as a lot of buildings are. Once a battle passed through during the Civil War period, they would confiscate a local building, and this old church worked very well because rather than bringing the stretchers in and laying them on the floor for the doctors and the surgeons to work on the injured, they could place the stretchers up on top of the pews and they wouldn't have to bend over so much to do their work, whether it's amputation or sewing them up or whatever. So it was used as a field hospital, and then after that period of time, of course, it continued to deteriorate and was eventually torn down. But what you see here now is not the original Harriet's Chapel, as I pointed out. We were able to locate an old church that was built shortly after the Civil War in the late 1860s, and it was referred to as the New Beaver Dam Primitive Baptist Church. It was built over in between Woodington and Deep Run community here in Lenore County. It was moved from that site down to Goodman Road near the fairgrounds in about the early 1990s. And the gentleman that owned it passed away in 2004. And his widow donated the old church to us in 2009. So we had it moved here in 2010. And since that time, we've been doing restoration and refurbishing it. It took quite an extensive amount of work to get the weatherboarding back in places it should be, even some of the sills underneath. Then we got into the interior to try to figure out how we wanted it to look. We were able to get some pictures of Primitive Baptist Church during that period of time. And one lady whose father once owned the building in the 1950s had one of the old pews from the original church here behind me on my left. So she donated that, and her sister donated another one out of Seneca, South Carolina. So once we knew what the pews looked like, we were able then to get a carpenter to duplicate those pews. These are an inch taller and an inch wider. They're a little more comfortable than the others were because people were just shorter back during the 1860s. But the windows, the only thing we knew about the windows at the time was this one piece of window sash that was left here. It obviously showed on top and bottom that there were 6 window panes. So the same carpenter that built the pews took some seasoned cypress and built the sashes for the windows. We took them then to a glass shop, and they ordered the antique glass to put in. So we pretty much had the interior then fixed up. The same carpenter or same cabinet maker made the podium for us, and he donated that. This is my grandmother's old quilt table we put here because it's used for a communion table, and of course the preacher's chair, which dates back to the 1800s. The old stove was interesting. It's actually in early 1900. It was those type stoves were used during the period of World War I, and somehow the Primitive Baptists found one of those old stoves, or bought one, and we found the parts in the old building at the time that was donated to us, and we found all 12 parts and put it back together, as well as the flue, and ran it up through the hanging chimney. We did not actually put in a brick chimney as was in here originally. We put in a false chimney, but we wanted it to look very much like it did during the Civil War period. So if you will, follow me outdoors and we'll go down the walking trail and show you the outdoors and where the battle actually took place. Thank you. This sign depicts the caring for the wounded. This old church, as well as a lot of other buildings, was used as a field hospital after the battle passed through here on the afternoon of December 14th, 1862. And the caring for the wounded took place. Some of the surgeons and doctors from both the Union and Confederate side operated here inside this church. And so a lot of the soldiers from both the Confederate and Union side were treated here. The doctors did not discriminate against the South or the North as far as the wounded. They took care of them all, and this sign reflects that.
Stomach wounds usually meant death, but a bullet to an arm or a leg was survivable.
All right, there you go. Breathe deep, deep.
These are the types of instruments that would have been used to perform the amputation.
Ooh, there's the saw.
There's the saw, right.
Wow.
They didn't really know about germs as we think of germs today. A quarter of the amputees didn't make it because of the infection that set in afterwards.
Some surgeons lacked training or were learning on the job.
I think the average soldier was probably very suspicious of the doctor.
So many amputations were performed in the aftermath of Antietam. The limbs literally piled up faster than they could be buried.
So it was on the evening of December the 13th, 1862, that the Confederates, under Nathaniel Shank Evans, established their lines here at Harriet Chapel. They were outnumbered by the Union forces 12,000 to 2,000, but they were determined to put up a fight. John Foster's Union forces were moving up from Newbern, which is to our left. Now, what Foster wanted to do was to destroy the Weldon Railroad, which would supply Robert E. Lee's forces in Virginia. And he was moving this way to take Goldsboro. And that's when Nathaniel Evans' Confederates put up a first resistance here on December the 14th, 1862.
Our sign here says the Confederate defenses of Kinston. What took place on the afternoon of December the 14th here on this site was under the command of General Nathan Evans, the Confederate general out of South Carolina, and he had about 2,000 men in his command at that time. And he was facing an onslaught from General John G. Foster on the Union side, attacked him from the south with about 12,000 troops. So his idea was not so much to win the battle as it was to delay him moving through Kinston and getting over to Goldsboro to burn the Wilmington Railroad Bridge. So the map shown here gives you the layout of the battle as it surrounds Kinston and where the lines of defenses are. Where we are now is walking along the final line of defense for the First Battle of Kinston. And as you can see here on the right, what's left of about 1 mile of earthworks, we have about 400 or 500 feet of them. And just behind these earthworks here, where the Confederates were dug in, is where the Union attack came. And it was a fairly dense forest and a deep swamp, and there was a lot of complaints about the Union soldiers having to wade through the brambles and briars in water up to their knees while being fired at by all of the Confederate musketry. So it was a pretty tough day on December the 14th, 1862 here at this point. Okay, we're here now at the center of the Confederate line of defense. The 61st North Carolina took the center line, and here they were under command of Colonel Radcliffe. If you take the Confederates' right flank, it was over pointing to my left in the deep swamp or near the deep swamp. And then as the Union attacked, the Union's left flank attacked the Confederates' right flank. And just the opposite was true over on this side, where it's the Confederates' left flank was being attacked by the Union's right flank as they were coming through. But we're standing right here where the major heat of the battle took place, and men fought and bled and died as the Union came across and made the attack and the Confederate soldiers are here at the earthworks defending.
All right, so we'll move from the Confederate earthworks. And if you take a look out there, that's a pretty steep incline. There's swamp out there. That is where the Union forces under Foster had to come through. 12,000 Federals against 2,000 entrenched Confederates under Nathan Evans. One can only imagine what those men on that December day in 1862 went through.
Looking down the line of our company as the yelling of the enemy came nearer and nearer to us, I judged that everyone felt about as I did. There was no levity now, and a great quiet prevailed. I could see pallor on every face. I believe every arm trembled as we raised our guns to our shoulders to fire, but all eyes were to the front. This was a testing time.
The biggest tree afforded no protection from those cannons. One might as well have been in front as behind it. The limbs and the tops were falling about us as if torn by a cyclone. We were enveloped, as it were, in a dense fog. The flashing of guns could be seen only a few feet away. A fellow can't see very far in a fight, but he sees aplenty when he's scared. What a din. What a variety of hideous noises. A great opera of death. Nicholas Weeks, 3rd Alabama Infantry.
I had just fired my gun and was lowering it from my shoulder when I felt a sharp sting in my face. I took my knapsack and started to go where the surgeons were located. I felt another stinging pain, this time in my left side just above the hip. Everything went black.
The Confederates charged from column into line and came on, our own men and the artillery warming to their work. The men worked like demons, belching forth a flood of fiery death, and the hills seemed to rock under the thunder of the battery. Great gaps were opened in the enemy's lines by the tornado of shot and shell. They retired into the friendly shelter of the woods, and night, and darkness, and silence drew a curtain of mercy over the fearful scene.
Dress it up, boys! Dress it up! Number 3, fire! Get down! Get down! Down! Can you see anything through all that? No, you? No? Get out! Get out! Oh my God! Oh my God! What was that? It's Price! Oh my God, where is he? He's gone! He's gone! You alright? I think so. Stay low, stay low. Kevin, Corporal, keep him down. All right. Stay down, everyone. Stay down. How long are we going to stay here and take all this?
Okay, we're now approaching the site of Starr's Battery. Captain Joseph Starr was here at this site with 5 pieces of smoothbore artillery. And of course, they were firing on the Union as they came in from the south. But at the same time, there was some larger cannon across the river that was firing over the heads of the Confederate soldiers onto the Union as they were attacking. So here at this point, there was some heavy artillery going on as well as musketry. So it was quite in a heated part of the battle here at this point. But Starr's Battery pit is fairly well preserved back over here, and we'll take a look at this if you'll follow me on down to the next site. We're down here at the overlook of Starr's Battery. You can see the battery pit's in pretty good condition. Captain Joseph Starr had 5 pieces of artillery here, and they fired on the Union. As the Union became more concentrated coming in towards the final line of defense, he was quite effectively firing upon them. However, it was not without return fire. The Union also was firing back with their artillery, as well as musketry firing at the same time on both sides. And later on that afternoon of December the 14th, Captain Starr pulled out from this position not because he was retreating, but simply because he was running out of ammunition. But then when he wanted to pull his 5 cannon out, he discovered he only had enough live horses left to pull 4 of them out. So the final piece of artillery he had here, he spiked it and left it so it could not be used. But as they pulled back towards Kinston, the left flank broke under the command of General Evans, and the Union gained this ground and pushed the Confederates back across the bridge towards Kinston. So it's quite an extensive battle here. Invite any of you to come and take a look at the sites here, walk along the trails, read the information signs, and it'll give you a good feel for what took place on the First Battle of Kinston, December 13th to 14th, 1862. Thank you so much.
When we reached the river, we found an eager crowd of civilians waiting our arrival. They had come from the north in search of their relations who were missing and probably killed or wounded. Many turned away quickly. Their stomachs could not stand the pressure. Most of the inquirers looked depressed and downcast, for they had looked in vain. Rice C. Bull.
There are periods in every man's life when the concentrated sorrow and bitterness of years seem gathered into one short day and night of agony. In less than 48 hours, 1/3 of my entire command had been swept away. My own boy brother lay dead on the field.
This is the position of what Captain Starr's battery would have held during the First Battle of Kinston that December. This was his artillery position. He held this position until their ammunition was exhausted, and then the Confederates had to retreat back into Kinston, and they had to give it up to General Foster and his Union forces. And then later on, they would move to Goldsboro, which was next on the Union map. And as we scan over here, you can still see the remnants of the Confederate entrenchments that tried to hold back Foster's Union forces here at Kinston. It's quiet here now. It's hard to believe that 160 years ago, this was hell on earth for so many young men. Many young men who had lived their final day. Boys who should have lived their dreams, their loves, raised a family. But they're gone now. And there's people today who wish to rewrite our history. They want to rewrite it for their own agenda, for their own selfishness. Well, they can knock down our monuments. But there's one thing they will never do. They will never knock down our spirit. And in the end, it is that spirit which will prevail. For the Copperhead Sam channel, I am Tim Wilbur, here on the Kinston battlefield.